Welcome to Six Pack Discussions, where Cody and Jared take on the biggest, most talked about headlines with logic, passion, and a six pack of beer.
If you're listening, we challenge you to take an unbiased view of the world, because we know these conversations are complicated. So sit down, crack a beer, and welcome a new perspective. Okay, guys, coming in, new episode from Six Pack Discussion. Today, what are we drinking here, Jared? I picked it up. I think it's called Happy Camper IPA out of New Mexico. Honestly, kind of a neat, very, very simple can. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but the logo is even almost hidden, I feel like, right? Wouldn't you say? Like, could you even find what it's called?
No, you couldn't.
Right? It almost feels like it's part of the government warning. What are we talking about today, man?
Today we're talking about a little bit of grass.
Ooh, the kind that you smoke?
I mean, if you're desperate enough. No. Front yards, backyards, golf courses.
Oh, man. Just had a problem here, guys.
Break.
Okay, so lawns, though.
So you don't want to hold it like that?
I don't want to hold it like this.
Hold on, guys. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here.
You can call it that.
I guess this really isn't a technical difficulty. This is a
physical
installation difficulty.
Microphone falling off the chair here. Yeah, dude, we're talking about lawns. We're back. We are back. We're talking about lawns.
We are back.
I was telling you right now, I was thinking of a creative title for our episode. And maybe our listeners can tell us if it's good or bad. We'd love to hear that feedback, but we were thinking lawns, the greener side and the ugly side.
Hey, so I love the title, first of all.
Okay.
I think it's kind of fun. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't this come from one of our listeners that reached out via DM? Email. Okay. Yeah.
So actually, it was one of our Canadian listeners and she said, hey, what's up with you Americans and your lawns? You seem a little obsessed. And I looked into it, and Americans are obsessed with their lawns. What do we got? I know you got some numbers here on how many people have lawns. How many square? Do you get how many?
80% of all homes in America.
NASA did a survey. NASA, right? So from their satellites up in space, 63,000 square miles of lawn in America. 63,000 square miles, right? That is a lot of lawn.
Speaking of NASA, it's really funny that you said that.
Okay. What do we got?
So they're estimating how much time it takes to keep America's lawns, nice and pristine like we do, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they're talking about from a man-hour standpoint.
NASA did this too?
No. This is not a NASA one. This is about the Apollo program.
Okay.
Right, the original Apollo program, it was from 1961 to 1972. It was estimated that, about 400,000 people working on the Apollo program, so essentially what they did is they started extrapolating the data. Every year, Americans spend more time on their lawn collectively. Now, granted, this is over millions and millions and millions of people, but just from a man-hour standpoint on what we have contributed to the Apollo program, going to the moon back in the early, mid, late, and 60s and early 70s.
How many people were on that project? 100?
400,000. That's what they were saying.
400,000?
At its peak, there were about 400,000 people working on the Apollo program.
I guess all of the manufacturing.
Everyone that touched the Apollo program.
Okay, not the employees of NASA, but all the private companies. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's why it's just. Anyways, every year Americans spend more time grooming their lawn than we did for Man on the Moon.
Okay, I would agree with that 100%.
Kind of funny though.
100%. What was the number though? I actually have a number here of how many hours.
6.7 billion man hours.
Is that how many per year?
That's how much it's projected that we spend on our lawns every year.
6.7 billion hours?
Man hours, yep.
Man hours.
Person hours.
I was just looking at the individual. And I have the number here. So the estimated average American mows their lawn 22 times a year.
Every other week-ish.
Yeah, every other week. And you think during winter, they're not really mowing, right? So it's probably the height in summer. They might be doing it every week. But so 22 times per year is the average American. It probably takes the average American about 1 hour, maybe a little over an hour, because you got to imagine we're in Arizona. We have smaller lawns than a majority, right? Of the U.S.
I remember back in Texas, man.
Big lawn.
Oh, I had a push mower. That shit sucked. It was so thick, and then having to rake it all up and bag it.
I'm thinking northeast, southwest, or
Southeast. I'm thinking Georgia. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm thinking Georgia with that humidity. Oh, dude,
I'm thinking
that. I bet it takes forever with that thick, muggy grass.
Well, it's just a lot more grass. Your whole front lawn, all grass. All your back lawn, all grass. Like here, it's like usually like a small plot of grass around some rock, right? In most yards in the Southwest. So still 22 times a year. Let's say it takes an hour per person. That's what, let's just say almost 20 to 30 hours a year each person spends on their lawn a year. That's not excessive, I wouldn't say, though, per person. 20 hours a year.
Yep.
30 hours a year.
Did you see what it does to home values? A manicured lawn versus a non-manicured lawn.
Ooh, I love this because we probably went down different rabbit holes. What's yours?
A manicured lawn increases its home value by 11% on average.
I love that.
Bro, I mean, this one I don't know.
Is
I'm going to say the median house value in America, probably what, 300,000?
That's a little high.
You think it's a little high?
200.
Okay, 200. We're talking $22,000
with a nice lawn. Well, you got to imagine. So I got some neighbors right here in Power Ranch. You know, I got a pretty nice neighborhood. I got a HOA. You know, there's definitely some rules. There are some neighbors in here. When me and Anna and my kiddos, we take a walk. I walk by people's houses and I'd say I'd never buy that house just because of their front lawn.
Now,
that tells me right now that's where that 11% comes
so
from.
what you're doing is you're extrapolating, wow, if they take that shitty care of their front lawn, I can only imagine how disgusting the inside is and so on and so forth. Yeah.
And if I see somebody that has a nice lawn, I go ahead and extrapolate, dang, this person cares.
Well, you know what's funny is what that's rooted in is, wow, that's a successful person, family, etc. They either have excess time, energy, or money in order to have someone take care of their lawn for them, or them, of course, prioritize it to where they're just kind of taking care of their own shit. So it's interesting how that's rooted in a status symbol is actually where it's.
Well, Jared, let's go into a little bit of the history of the lawn, maybe. So Americans,
16th century, I believe.
Lawns are kind of a new thing for Americans.
For Americans, yes. Yeah. It's rooted in England, correct?
100%. So England, they really kind of let's say the forefathers of the lawn. Let's just say they started it, and a lot of it was British royals, Scotland golf, believe it or not. So a lot of people that were kind of part of what I would say upper class would have manicured lawns because they could afford people to literally go out there and cut the lawn with scythes and like scissors. Like, because there was no such thing as a mower. So to have a manicured lawn back then, you would have to have 5 hours a day with, I think it's called a scythe, right? They kind of like the
little
Grim Reaper looking.
I was just about to say, I think of it like a Halloween costume prop.
Yeah. Grim Reaper looking device, right? But what that was originally meant for is cutting grain. And so they would go out to the grass and kind of cut the grass with that. It would take many hours. And so English royals. And so where that carried over, and I kind of like this where I'm not going to say the tradition of the lawn, and maybe you can go into the tradition of lawns a little bit in America. It didn't start here, but you can see where it got kind of a root. Thomas Jefferson.
And George Washington.
Okay, maybe same website here, buddy. Thomas Jefferson.
That was on a few, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So Thomas Jefferson, I would say he kind of started it. So you guys can probably remember Thomas Jefferson, of course, one of our initial presidents, really the father of the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. So he when he was building his estate called Monticello, which you guys may have heard of, I've actually been there. It's beautiful. And you can tell that he was really like an artist in mind. Everything was very
purposeful.
Yeah. And when he was building that entire estate, one of the things that he brought from England after his many visits there is he wanted to bring that country estate feel, and that requires a manicured lawn. Lots of grass, all brought in, seeds brought in, and then, meticulously cared for. George Washington, of course, hired an English landscaper and gardeners to achieve a very similar type of look at Mount Vernon, and still to this day has that Bowling Green deer park, what it's called, which is very common in a lot of English garden designs. If you can imagine castles and royalty, those type of homes would have these large, expansive greens, which would just be a kind of an immense kind of entryway to their front area, I guess you could say. So those two kind of brought it here, and they really thought it was powerful, but it took another 100 to 200 years for it to be mainstream. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, Jared, how it kind of started getting a little bit more trendy, how Industrial Revolution allowed it to happen.
So really where Cody was getting at is this Industrial Revolution, i.e., the real up and coming of, track homes, kind of the uprising of
Middle class, maybe?
Middle class, but no, what I'm trying, transportation, golly, like trains.
Yeah.
So essentially people would start to reorient their houses for the train tracks. So that way it could appear, I may be a blue collar worker, but hey, I bust my ass and look at my nice lawn.
As the train by people, passerbys would actually see their homes.
Passerbys. How funny is that? Like,
you would never, like, I would not want my home facing a train track. But you would think if you were trying to show yourself moving from the bottom class to the middle class, you would want to show that.
I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to articulate to our listeners what you would say the quintessential American home is right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm closing my eyes right now.
Yep.
To your point. And I imagine kind of a cottage look, maybe a modern farmhouse look, what I would say house, maybe white, and 2-story, maybe a little bit of a porch out in the front, a lawn with a sidewalk to the street, and open area to the front. And you know what? You're right. Open area, not another house.
You probably described less than 5% of houses, 10% of houses all across America. But yet that's what you think of that American dream of a home ownership. Isn't that funny though?
Yeah.
So that's what they would do. They would potentially, reorient these track homes. That's when it started really getting popularized in the Industrial Revolution type.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's interesting how trends kind of take place there, huh?
What did you think about? So whenever you think of crops, you think of, corn, cotton, wheat, rice, all that shit, right? What do you think about grass as a crop almost?
It's the number one irrigated crop in the U.S.
Right. Has no real value from an edible standpoint.
I got a couple value points to it here. We haven't got to that point yet.
But
not edible.
It's interesting to think about it from a crop perspective.
It uses more land mass than all the next 8 crops grown in the U.S. combined.
What about the water?
And water.
Holy crap, what about the water?
A lot.
Especially in climates like California, Arizona.
I kept on seeing those two specifically.
Interesting. It's funny.
California, Arizona.
I would say, I wouldn't say split Arizona, California. I would say probably 75-25 California.
Oh, California is number one, and that's because they have a lot of rules. I have a lot of family in California, as you know.
Oh, what is it?
Xeriscape.
No, I know it's Xeriscape, but it's like hashtag water shame or drought shame or what was it?
Okay, dude, we were hitting the
Shoot, I came across it was like hashtag drought shame or something like that, right?
Right here, I have it because I think it's hilarious. I don't like this type of stuff, honestly. I think we talked about it in our brownie points episode, or what's it called when you get points that aren't really worth it?
Virtue signaling.
This is very virtue signaling. California. Oh, here you go. Called hashtag drought shame.
I don't remember if I said that, but I'll take credit for it.
Yeah. So what this means is one of the things that Jared's mentioning here is lawns require what they say the equivalent of 200 gallons of drinking water per day per person. So a lot of water. Now they say to the equivalent because they're not using drinking water. In some areas they're using like reclaimed water or just tap water. So it's just a higher amount if it's drinking because it has to be processed. But still, a lot of water goes into the lawns. And Californians who are acutely aware of the wastage have kind of taken to shaming their neighbors. So, maybe a neighbor that moves into a house that has a xeriscape or less grass or maybe turf. they move into a neighbor that's, watering their grass that they planted 10 years ago. They'll go ahead and go on to Instagram or Twitter and kind of shame this person with this hashtag. So, yeah, my neighbor is hashtag drought shame. I need a hashtag drought shame my neighbors because I notice them watering my lawns at 6 a.m. every morning. Do they not care about the future of California? And, I have mixed feelings about this. If you're in a drought, yeah, you probably should take some types of reservations on your water use. But did you, how many Californians that lived in a house or moved into a house, how many of them actually purposely you think have a landscape like that? Because I think it's probably rare for most people to actually build their house, design it without grass intentionally. I think most people probably move into a house that was already done like that, and they're just kind of taking advantage of it. I don't know. Maybe they remove the grass. I doubt that. You get $500 in California if you remove your grass. They actually have an incentive program. So if you have grass in your front lawn.
Is that annually or one time?
One time. $500. That takes a lot of work, too.
Just cracked on my second beer?
Dude, I got a little bit more time here.
Oh, okay.
Give me 2 minutes.
So, xeriscaping. Kind of interesting because it's really only, I would say, popular here in this desert Southwest. I would say really Nevada, Arizona, and California are really the only 3 states where it's taboo to have xeriscaping. It's not taboo to have xeriscaping.
Yeah.
I would say it's arguably the norm.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the norm still, actually. I think Phoenix has a lot of grass. Tucson, though, actually has laws for xeriscaping. To my knowledge, I don't know if you know, because you lived down there.
I lived in an apartment, though, man. So
I know, but I thought maybe
we had grass at the apartment.
So in Tucson, they have laws on, I don't think you can have grass in your front yard at all. Like, it's actually a law. It's illegal to have grass in your front yard, from my knowledge. If you have a single family home, I think in your backyard you can. I know a couple of people that live down there. 100%, their entire neighborhoods are rock front gardens. So that's where that's what we're talking about today, right? Where should the government intervene with having of grass? And does grass have value or not? Or should it even matter? Should the government be intervening in this type of stuff? Clearly, the government is intervening in California. They're incentivizing non-use. They're essentially cutting off the amount of water you can use, which means you can't water your grass appropriately. And then they also are, in Tucson, like I said, making it illegal
trying
to do it.
Imagine my drive to my work or buddy's house and
no grass in the front yards, buddy, in Tucson.
Huh.
Okay. Second beer. Cracked it open. What do you got?
Yeah, so as Cody introduced this is the Happy Camper IPA. Happy Camper is a hoppy, malty, perfectly balanced, world-class IPA made just for you. A beer that says, I'm from New Mexico and I like good beer. Don't touch my motorcycle. First brewed in 2009, first canned in 2010, and first shotgunned about 5 seconds later. It's a New Mexico original from New Mexico's original craft brewery. Drink it with pride.
And this is from Santa Fe Brewing Co. since 1988.
First brewed in 2009, first canned in 10, shotgun 5 seconds later.
I kind of like the 5 seconds later. It might have increased my score for this beer, honestly.
Oh, definitely increased mine.
And we have an average alcohol here per volume of 6.6%. It comes in a yellow can. I'm pretty sure this is the New Mexico state flag emblem. Would you agree with that? Oh, Jared Jones. You don't know your state flags?
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't.
Yeah, I asked that question so rhetorically. I was like, you probably couldn't even name the colors on the Arizona state flag.
Oh, kiss my ass. I know our state flags.
What colors are on there, buddy?
Well, we got a little bit of red, a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow.
That's all you got. Okay, nice job.
So,
dude, what if you got
little
that wrong?
sign.
What if
That
you
would have been embarrassing.
Dude,
you get the Texas state flag. I think that's like punishable by death.
Do you think? Okay, let me give you this fact first, and then I'll ask you the question. I heard from, I think Gallup poll ran this study back in when I was in college.
Okay.
and it ran around the US or the ASU campus pretty wildly because I think they actually ran it at our campus and other campuses.
Oh, cool.
And it was, where does chocolate milk come from?
Definitely brown cows.
That is what about, I think it was like 18% of Americans believe.
Shut the fuck up.
No. 18% of Americans, and I might be off by like 2%. It might be 16. It might be 20. Dude, a fifth almost of Americans believe chocolate milk comes from brown cows.
I'm going to fact check this. There's
Bro.
no fucking
Okay,
way.
so real quick, now that I give you that for kind of a baseline, how many Americans could name what their state flag looks like? The one that they live in and maybe even were born in. What do you think like the percentage of Americans can say, okay, I know what my flag looks like. I could pick it out of like a group of 10.
I'm going to say... Oh, hold on.
It's different, huh? Because
Did you say pick it out of a group of 10? Or did you say describe it coldly?
describe it coldly because that's a little harder.
Then I would say that's probably around 10%.
You think 10% of Americans?
I don't think very highly of Americans as a whole.
No, I would say it's like 60, maybe 70%.
Hell no. Hell no.
Well, right now, me and you can both describe the Arizona flag without issue.
Okay.
So that means 100% of this room. So I think it's in between your 10 and 100%.
Do you know?
It's in between.
I'll even say horrible this country would be if everyone, all 350 million people, thought and acted like you and I. Holy shit, dude.
Miserable. I wouldn't want to live in it.
Oh my God. No, we need people to level us out. No, maybe I was wrong on 10%. I can't give you in the 60s. I think that's ridiculous.
Shit.
I maybe can be talked to 25. Maybe. But come on, man. Like, I'm sorry, 20% think brown cows equal brown milk.
You're right.
So I got to take out those because I'm not counting on those morons.
Dude.
And mind you, those are college educated people then, right?
I don't know if they were all on college campuses.
Whatever.
I know that the survey went around the ASU campus.
Yeah. Anyways. All right. So
what are you thinking for this beer ranking? Now that I made you laugh.
all right, hold on. When's the last time you pulled the statistics as far as where our heat map is for listeners? Do we have any concentration in New Mexico?
Bro, I don't think we have.
Okay. I'm willing to sacrifice it then. Whenever I take a sip of this, I can close my eyes, and you know how I asked you to imagine the American house? I can close my eyes and imagine New Mexico.
Really?
when I drink this.
And when you imagine New Mexico, are you imagining
Horrible.
Oh, wow.
Walter White.
It's weird how some states have like a connotation to other states. Like I've seen multiple like polls of how they like how residents of certain states think of their neighbor states. So how Arizonans think of Californians.
Yeah.
Mostly negative.
Yeah, we hate them.
How Arizona thinks of New Mexico. Poor meth heads.
Yep.
Because of the show,
Yep.
of course, right? Like, unfortunately, like Walter White in that show, I don't know.
Breaking Bad, yeah.
Yeah, did nothing good for New Mexico.
Nope.
It might have made a museum or something. If you think of Utah, you think of probably Mormons in Salt Lake City.
Mormons and ski towns.
Exactly. But you know what? If you went to Florida, they probably have no reservations or opinions of those three states like we do. It's interesting when it feels like our neighbors, like quite literally, like, oh, this is
Almost like our rivals too, though.
Yeah, it does. 100%. And I'm sure there's some like school rivalry that kind of occurs naturally, like Michigan, Ohio, right? I'm sure there's some stuff like that. Alabama.
I really don't have an
Georgia.
opinion about Nevada. Nevadans?
No, you think of
There's just not
gambling?
enough of them. Yeah, of course, I think of gambling, but I don't think negatively.
Sin City. You're like, oh yeah, those guys aren't really living there. They're just kind of visiting.
Yeah.
That's what you think of Nevada.
So, rating?
Dude, I don't like this beer at all.
At all. I think this is horrible.
What is going on here, Happy Camper IPA? Great name. Happy Camper.
Even funny story. Like I said, it improved. I'm going to give you a 0.1 for the fun story. No, a 0.1 extra. I'm sorry.
I'm going 1.8.
I think you went high.
Really? I love the shotgunning of. I would never shot the gun this beer. Sorry.
I couldn't
do it.
Just to get it down faster, maybe that's a strategy, which I respect from the brewmaster. I think you went high at 1.8. Dude, honestly, I'm thinking 1.1.
Holy shit.
Dude,
that might
I think-
be the lowest ever.
Check tape, man. The second I cracked this open and took a sip, you can see my face. I was like,
I saw you. And I
that's
saw your
what sucks
second
about being on video.
Well, your second one was hilarious because after you took a second one, I saw you take a second one. We're like, I have to force this down 3 more times. Dude, it is a rough beer for whatever reason. Now, here's the funny thing. When I envision an IPA, and whenever I saw you ordering IPAs back in the day when I would never do it.
Right.
Before we started this episode, this podcast, I thought IPAs tasted like this.
Yep.
Because I think I had a bad couple of them in a row.
Dude, it's almost like sours. Sours can really turn you.
Exactly. So I had a couple of them that tasted like this. And when you have an IPA that tastes like this, you're like, this is like, it's got a bad back of the tongue taste.
It almost tastes like a light beer. In a real IPA, we're just kind of...
Really?
Yeah.
I would do that for you and see if you could do... I don't think it's the same.
No, because you know how a light beer you drink... We talked about this last episode. If you know you're going to be at a barbecue, you're going to slam 10, you got to do like a Coors Light or a Michelob Ultra, right?
100%.
But to where an IPA, you intentionally will have like, 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah. For this
at
episode.
a bar or a sitting or something like that in this episode. I view this because this is lacking that full-bodied punch, that full-bodied flavor that you're accustomed to with a real good IPA. So I'm imagining this as a watered-down IPA.
You're like, I'm not getting the goodness of an IPA, the full flavor.
But I mean, 6.6, I mean, that's a strong beer.
It's 2 beers. It's literally two Coors Lights.
It is. I mean, that's a strong beer.
Yeah. Okay, guys, you have our rankings.
I stand by them, dude.
This might be one of the first beers that we say, don't go by. Sorry.
I won't. No.
Santa Fe Brewing Co. If you want a redemption, send us a 6-pack, maybe a different one than Happy Camper.
Please.
We will try it out. And you know what? As always, we will give you your honest opinions. Hopefully your next one, give us something totally different. Maybe an amber, maybe a caramel of some sort. I don't know. Okay, a couple things I wanted to go over. First thing I want to thank the listener for this because it was more fascinating than I think both of us originally thought it was going to be.
So I remember I was doing research on this yesterday. And I'm over on my computer and phone and shit like that. And Britt goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm doing a little research for a podcast tomorrow." She said, "Oh, what it's about?" And I usually always screw with like, "Oh, you'll have to tune in." Just kind of be a jackass. But for this reason, I guess I was nice. For this episode, I guess I was nice. I was like, "Oh, learning about grass, babe." And she goes, "Fine." That's all she said.
Okay. How many times in your life did you think you were going to go researching on the origins of grass in America and the repercussions of having it in your yard? Zero.
I'm going to say the same amount of times I'm going to volunteer to my congressman, "Hey, take more money out of my paycheck."
Zero.
I'm not paying enough.
This is not something people research.
No.
But clearly there's a good amount of opinions online. I found this actually immensely easy to reresearch.
One of the easier things to research, surprisingly.
There's a lot of research around this. So a couple things I want to go through. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, and I kind of pushed back. I haven't pushed back with actual data yet.
As far as the cons.
Yeah, so you mentioned that at this point, it feels like lawns and grass are essentially just a cost to everything.
Yep.
There's no real value to them. Well, many scientists have actually ran the numbers, and what they've determined a well-watered and fertilized lawn, interesting the word fertilized there. We'll talk about that in a minute because there are some negatives to it.
Right, with the pesticides in the water. And
is one of the largest carbon sinks in America. So when I mean carbon sink, think of essentially a storage container for all of the CO2, a greenhouse gas in the air, the same greenhouse gas that gas-run vehicles run on, essentially sucks out of the air and puts it back into the ground where it came from. A lot of people don't realize this, but almost all of the oil and the gas and the natural gas that comes out of the ground is actually from vegetation. It's not from animals or dinosaurs. A lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm right now when I'm driving my car, I'm actually burning up a dinosaur." No, you're actually burning up some grasses. You're burning up a tree. You're burning up a bush. Because a vast majority of the world has been covered in grass and trees and bushes, not animals, right? And so the ratio of the oil carbon down below that's been kind of covered up and kind of synthesized over millions of years is from processed grass, which is kind of interesting. And so when I was doing this, I was like, okay, that I knew that was kind of a factor, but how much of a factor is it? So they look at this and they say, okay, the U.S. lawn, the 63,000 square miles every year stores up 16.7 telegrams of carbon. Telegrams is some absurd number, right? Some huge number, billions per part or whatever, right? So it stores a large amount of carbon. So it sucks it out of the air, puts it in the ground, and says, hey, it's no longer in your air. It's not going to cause a greenhouse effect anymore. So there is a large value component there.
Right. So it's actually that research that has sparked a lot of these high dense cities, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, the LAs, et cetera, to where certain companies are actually willing to invest from, kind of a LEED certification, kind of a, reducing their carbon footprint standpoint, et cetera, into these green roofs to where essentially they will turn the roofs of their buildings into a pseudo city jungle.
Yeah, they'll add like some trees to it. They'll add some grass,
of course,
bushes, maybe some pollinating
flowers,
plants for bees. You're seeing kind of this ad, and it's kind of an ode to the original American dream of having parks and lawns, where in inner cities and downtown areas, you just don't have that land space. And so these LEED buildings, well, I don't know if maybe you want to describe what LEED means, but essentially...
So essentially, in short, LEED means that the architect is very hyper-aware, hyper-conscious of all the materials, everything from the heating and cooling system to the materials that they use to construct. The building is essentially LEED certified, right? And there's various levels to LEED. But depending on the materials used and the way you construct the building, you get the certification, and essentially saying it's thumbs up. You've actually done everything you can in order to reduce your carbon footprint, or footprint to detrimental to society. Reduce that.
100%. So one of the things, Dr. Carly Zilter, what she did in her study, she studied the ability for lawns to carbon capture, right? What I was kind of explaining a minute ago. And she looked at, okay, the typical American lawn, right? What that looks like, X amount of square feet. Let's just say it's, 100 square feet. She looked at the typical American lawn and then looked at an untouched environment relatively. So if you take a piece of land that is untouched by people in New Jersey compared to a New Jersey American lawn, an untouched piece of land in Georgia compared to a Georgia lawn, compared to a desert part in Arizona to a person's lawn in Arizona. She looked at those two things. If that space stayed the exact same, right, without any type of, if people never existed here, what would be the difference in the carbon sink abilities of that space, that 100 square feet? You get where I'm going here? Mm-hmm. Very interesting study, right? It's essentially, does the person intervening in Mother Nature causing negative or positive ability for that space of land to be better at sinking carbon prior or before the intervention? And she determined, yes, 100%, due to the ability for the unique ways and effort put towards the caring of lawn. For instance, mowing very specifically will actually allow that space to be more efficient at storing carbon. Now, one little additive to this is that when you mow, you have to actually leave the grass on the lawn.
Therefore, taking away from the very aesthetics that many Americans have it for.
Bingo. And this is weird because when I mow, I do it that way. And there's two reasons why. One, I don't have to dump it in the trash can. Easier, convenient. Right? In my last house, I haven't done this house because I don't have grass yet. I've always thought this is better. We didn't do this growing up. My dad always wanted to make his lawn very nice looking. The general American way. Secondly, is that it actually makes your grass much greener in the long term. because you're returning all that nitrogen richness that the grass has taken in, and you're returning it back to the soil. And so, and I can't say most of Americans, but a good amount of Americans that mow their lawns do it this way, especially in their large plots. So we're kind of used to these smaller plots. The southeast is kind of used to this kind of smaller plots. But when you have a larger plot of land, you don't have the ability to collect your grass cuttings. You just leave it on the lawn, and then it just kind of dies off. And it's kind of weird. Some people say, like you just said, it doesn't look as nice aesthetically. 2 days later, can't even tell. It's that fast that the grass gets pulled back into the earth. So she did say that was the only additive, is as long as you leave your clippings on the earth and do not collect them, you'll see a better collection of carbon than Mother Nature's barren land prior, which is kind of cool, right?
That is cool. Actually, shout out to man on that one, I guess, right?
Shout out to who?
Shout out to just man.
Yeah, right. Like, and you know what that means is that the effort put in is actually reaping a benefit of some sort. Like, if there's no effort there, it's just going to be how it is. Whether it's drought, whether it's sunny, whether it's watery.
Doing, and I don't know if they went into the level of betterness, if that's a word. And hear me out on this one. So obviously, whenever you have to actually physically mow it, right, you're emitting a lot of greenhouse gases into it. So I wonder if the net is better if you just didn't fuck with it at all.
Yeah, so that's the one thing that we haven't gotten into yet, because there is a carbon footprint of most yard equipment. And this might be where our debate point comes on the
yard equipment, pesticides.
Yeah.
Right?
Production of those pesticides and herbicides. The yard equipment's the biggest one, though. I actually ran a number here.
What is a $40 billion a year industry as far as landscaping companies?
200 million gallons of gas. 200 million gallons of gas. Now, here's a weird thing.
Weed eaters, lawnmowers, leaf blowers.
I think the entire world produces 70 million barrels of gas a year. I don't know. It's probably like 1 barrel of gas a day. 1 day of production of gasoline for all of the yards. That's still a lot. But still, it's kind of a small fraction of the gas used, because most gas is actually used for industrial use, right? And then cars are number 2. But 200 million gallons of gas are used for mowing and yard use. And then to your point, 70 million pounds of pesticides. Oof. Now, pesticides are interesting because pesticides are meant for bugs? No, you know what? I'm sorry. Pesticides are herbicides and insecticides combined. It's either one. Pesticide, essentially, either one can be a pest.
And then the weed killers?
Well, that's a herbicide.
Okay.
So herbicide and insecticide, I think they root up to a pesticide.
Got it.
Because they're both are considered pest.
Okay.
Damn, 70 million pounds of pesticides. Which, I do use some pesticides in my lawn in previous.
I use weed killer.
Yeah. Roundup or whatever it is. Yeah. Ground clear. I don't know if I use maybe a gallon, but I guess, dude, when you have, what'd you say? 80% of people have
80% of Americans.
Shit. Well, fucking, that's what, 150 homes? 150 million
homes, yeah.
Well, there you go.
That's crazy, though, right? So, and where does that water get absorbed into, right?
The groundwater, all that.
And then, obviously, gets evaporated.
Well, once it's evaporated, it's good, I think, right? Or do you think there's acid rain there? What do you think?
I wouldn't say it's good.
Okay, real quick, just from my perspective here, if it was raining, it's been raining a lot the last couple days here. Would you ever be afraid to go walk out and just put your tongue out and drink rainwater?
No.
Would you think there's pesticides in it?
I'd be curious. Actually, I don't know the data behind that.
I don't think there is.
I do a lot of shit that I'm not supposed to, though.
Yeah, I personally, now again, I'm not scientific. I'm not pretending like I know this. I just don't believe there is at all. I think once it gets evaporated, it becomes clean water. Maybe I'm missing something here, but This is like fourth grade.
So you're
water
saying
cycle.
only H2O gets evaporated and therefore comes down.
Yeah, that's what
Is that what you're saying?
I believe. I don't know. My belief system may be wrong here.
I guess, from an evaporation standpoint, I could easily see from a weight standpoint, depending on, the different various chemicals in these, pesticides. If
would anybody say?
I could talk about a lot of shit I don't know anything about right now, but
would you? Has anybody? When you collect rainwater, like, isn't there's people out there that collect rainwater and drink it, like rainwater collection systems?
No,
I don't think you have to filter. I don't know.
I thought they did.
Shit, I don't know.
Because honestly, I remember. So my father-in-law, if you're listening, shout out Mike, big time prepper. Like,
does he collect rainwater?
Crazy prepper. No, he doesn't.
Okay. He doesn't go that far.
He doesn't. So there used to be this show, and I don't know if there still is. I haven't watched it.
Preppers.
Extreme Preppers on Netflix.
I've never seen it, but I've heard of it.
So it's called Extreme Preppers.
Okay.
On Netflix. It's an okay show, but I watched it more so from a comedic effect. Dude, these guys, I would never want to live my life the way they live their life. They literally think every time they get back from a grocery store or every time they hug their wife or kiss their kids, it's the last time, right? That's how they live their life, in extreme prepping mentality.
Oh, my God.
Like, honestly, I feel bad for them because I bet back in the mid 2020, whenever, the grocery stores were just barren with all these, products and goods and shit.
They were feeling so good.
Like, I told you. And then all of a sudden, fast forward 2 months, it's like, oh, now I just don't get my choice of which milk I want to do. Right?
Now, would you rather live your way like that show or that mail order bride show you were talking about last time?
Oh, 90 Day Fiance? Hold on. So is the question, would I rather a 90 Day Fiance or to live my life in an extreme prepper?
Yes.
I would have to say...
I'm sorry, dude.
I would have to say extreme prepper.
Shout out, Brittany. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, I'd have to say extreme prepper, because all of those relationships I think are just fundamentally and foundationally flawed, and I don't want to get taken for half my money.
Oh my God.
So Brittany, she's pretty smart, so she could take me for half, and then all of a sudden this foreigner, she would take. I would literally leave 2023 with 25%.
25% of what you got. Oh,
all right.
Do I want to go through a couple things?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know how we got up on that tangent.
Okay.
Dude, I'm so glad I'm almost done with this third beer.
Third beer?
Yeah.
Bro, you are running.
You remember we talked about this like 4 or 5 episodes ago?
You down them.
You drink them slower when they suck. I drink them faster when they suck.
Shit.
I want to get
these guys are like this. Produce more for this guy.
I get why they shotgunned it 5 seconds after.
Wow. Okay. Dude.
I would shotgun this too.
So, like I've already said multiple times, again, guys, how exciting is this lawn stuff? One thing that I found fascinating, and I highlighted it because this is just unique science. Like when somebody comes up with a hypothesis saying, hey, do lawns cool down the surrounding area? That's the hypothesis. Yes, they do, Jared. Yes, they do. So Mississippi State University ran a study of healthy lawns and the same cooling effect of a 8.5 ton air conditioning compressor that uses greenhouse gases, just might add, right? So by just having the lawn, you'll be able to cool the area with that lawn. That's pretty amazing, right? So just so you know, an 8.5 ton compressor is probably 3 times larger than me and your houses have. So, if you imagine how cold your house can get inside, that surrounding area with that lawn can be cooler just by having it. Okay, 1 minute. About a half of the heat energy directed to a grassy area, half, is eliminated by the evap transportation. Non-vegetative surfaces like rock, artificial turf, and cement do not have the same cooling effect, and in some cases can actually create a mini heat island effect, increasing the ground level temperature. Have you never heard of Phoenix called a heat island? Yes, you have.
Dude, my cleats have literally melted on turf in Phoenix before.
Bingo. Check that out. So not only does it take CO2 in, but it also cools down the general ground temperature and air temperature in that area. And you know how I know this is true? Remember growing up? Remember when it would be, 110 out, and we would go down into those green belts? And that would be like just cooler in general in our neighborhood.
Oh, I vividly remember.
Like we would walk around in the streets, but we would never hang out on the sidewalks and streets. We'd go out on the green belts and we'd go drive around in there in my golf cart. We'd walk around in the green belts because it was like 10 degrees cooler.
Those are some good days, man.
Right? But somehow we were able to walk around at 110 degrees, 115 degrees all summer long because we were in those green belts. We call them green belts here in Arizona. It's essentially a park with grass that just is very elongated throughout entire neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I was reading that, I was thinking, man, the cooling effect is exciting to me, especially as people believe that, we have a heat challenge. We have a global warming challenge. We have a climate challenge of warming temperatures. Does grass maybe solve some of this? Does it provide a solution in some areas? It seems to kind of solve some of the areas here in Phoenix.
So, I guess my one pushback on this. So it seems like every year, especially around the summertime, we start really picking up on climate change, global warming, etc., specifically to America.
Yeah.
I know the term is global warming, but we always seem to hyper focus on America's warming, right?
Yes.
Do you remember the statistic I said earlier? 80% of America's homes have grass. So, okay, let's say we increase it to 20. Now let's say all 100% of homes have grass.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really think that fifth of an increase is going to drastically move the needle? Because we're still having all these problems and we have a shit ton of grass.
Oh, you're saying would it contribute to negating the effect?
No. So what I'm saying is, all these grandiose studies, we have 80% of families have grass or homes.
Maybe it's already been mitigating it this whole time.
Yeah. So it's not good enough.
Well, it might be slowing down the process, right?
I guess, yeah.
It could be, right? I'm not saying it is. Now, here's a couple things. I've been kind of pro grass so far, right? Couple things. Dude, I got a whole other can here if you want to split it.
Nope. I would not do that.
So, couple things. Yes, the gas lawn equipment is a bit of a problem. It tends to offset some of the pros of lawns. So recently, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's been a kind of surgence of electrical power equipment.
Yeah, that E60 Go or something like that, that brand.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. I think it's Easy Go or something like that, but maybe it's Easy. Yeah, that's one. I think both Home Depot and Lowe's both have their own brands with their own brands. And I don't know if you're doing this with grass research, but you probably saw that kind of idea a little bit. And some of these scientists said, hey, you know what? To offset or to remove the use of fossil fuels from the equation, if you use electrical, you get all of the benefits of having grass without any of the repercussions of using the gasoline mower. And for a while, for let's say maybe 15 years, the electric mower has just sucked.
No battery.
Yeah. I bought one. Right when we moved to my house, I put grass down. Guys, not a lot of grass, right? It was, I don't know, with 300, 400 square feet of grass.
Maybe,
yeah. Yeah, right? Not a lot of grass. Bought the electric one, returned it 30 days later. It sucked. Couldn't do it. Right? Now I'm used to maybe I was just not patient enough. I'm used to a gas mower. It has more torque, more power. It ran through it. Returned it, bought the other one. Now I also
bought the gas version?
Bought the gas version, yes. Now, what I will say is I still have the gas version. Great. The electric one, easier to use. If you have a small plot of grass, makes a lot of sense. If you have a little bit more grass, like I won't be using a battery one in my new house because it's gonna be more grass. But battery powered edgers, blowers, weed whackers,
Hedge clippers.
hedge clippers make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I have battery powered hedge clippers and blowers.
Yeah, those perfect. Those have always been gas in the past. Those all make sense. At this point, the amount of energy needed, the battery can do. I'm sure the mowers will figure it out sooner or later. Or maybe the ones right now that are sold. This is 4 years ago when I bought that mower. But that kind of, I think it kind of levels out that equation a little bit of gas used to the pros to the lawn. One other thing I wanted to kind of think about is, did you, and we go through kind of our finals here, but did you find kind of the, how do you say it? The pro vegetable garden?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I saw a little bit of that, yeah.
Maybe give a little summary of what it is.
So, no, I actually wasn't going to go on that because before we go into our actual opinions, I want to talk about one more con, and we haven't really touched on this too much. What about the invasive species that we introduced by bringing non-native desert plants in here?
Wait, non-native desert?
Non-native desert plants into a desert environment.
Grass you're talking about?
Grass, various shrubbery, etc. Like any type of landscaping, I guess.
In Arizona.
Arizona, California, Nevada, etc.
Like a palm tree.
They kept on talking about English ivy. I guess English ivy, not native to this, but that was an invasive. I believe we brought in 22 different species of weeds.
Okay. What does that have to do with the grass?
So what it had to do with grass is just talking about invasive species in general.
Okay.
So what do you think about that? I mean, is that any type of credence on your opinion as far as, bringing in non-native?
Dude, I can't catch a break with this mic. I moved it this episode.
I know. This is going to be a fun bloopers reel.
Pausing here for technical difficulties.
Installation difficulties. Dude, I just hate this beer so much. Golly. What was that one that we had to change out mid-episode? Oh, it was at my house.
I think it was a Yeti.
Yes, it was like a Yeti Porter or Stout, right?
Yes.
It was that brown and white can. I think this may be worse.
Oh, yeah, I think it is too.
I'd be curious to ask our listeners, what is the lowest score? What did I say? 1-1, 1-2? I think I still went high.
Sorry, guys. I suck.
Yeah. So what about like invasive species, like introducing new forms of weeds and
Yeah,
shit like that?
I have kind of mixed opinions on that, dude. The invasive species thing's weird because I feel like the world has always had invasive species. Let's just be honest. Like, I'm pretty sure.
You're talking like Pangea days?
Even then, but like, okay, Hawaii, right?
Okay.
State in America. Has it always been around?
What do you mean?
The landmass in the middle of the ocean?
Yes.
No.
I guess it was formed through volcanoes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. I guess
I'm sorry.
maybe I didn't. I wasn't
But the
understanding.
landmass has always been there. So it was formed by volcanoes.
Okay.
Since
It's been a landmass, it's always been. That's why I was confused. I
Yeah, I'm
guess.
sorry. Was the vegetation there as soon as the volcano erupted?
No.
Okay. So every single vegetation item there is what?
I guess by definition invasive, right?
Bingo. So invasive is an interesting word because at what time period does something become invasive?
Versus naturalized almost.
Exactly. And
That's an interesting thought.
And so I look at a lot of species, and I think evolution occurs by pressure from outside species. If you think about it, right? This is Darwin's theory, right? What does he say? the best.
Survival of the fittest.
Exactly. Survival of the fittest. The best one wins. That's what I was going to say.
Same
thing. But survival of the fittest, no one would know what that means. But survival of the fittest, everyone knows what that means. And so invasive species is in our, I don't want to have humans do it, absurdly amount, to your point. But I think it would happen naturally over time, no matter what. Birds bring seeds over, right? They carry over on logs through the ocean. This happens over millions of years, of course. This is where our listeners will say, Cody, you're forcing invasive species versus having it naturally occur. But I still think it's not something that would not occur no matter what. It would still occur. It just takes a longer amount of time. So we're kind of speeding up the process, you could say, with the grass thing. And you're right. Almost all grasses in America, non-native.
Right.
Non-native.
Yeah, that Bermuda comes out of
South Africa.
South Africa, thank you.
Kentucky bluegrass comes out of some part of...
I thought England.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah,
those are the two main ones. Anyways,
yeah.
I guess all that is to say is, this is a little outside of grass, but it's still landscaping, i.e. taking over certain trees and putting them in the desert. Pecan trees, prime example. One of the more famous neighborhoods here in Arizona, the pecans.
Yeah.
They
trees.
waste shit tons, I think is the scientific term, of water just to keep them alive.
Almonds in California. Your almond milk does not exist without California almond farming, which takes absurd.
I think 2 shit tons.
No, maybe 4.
4 shit tons, yeah.
Of water to produce those almond trees.
So I guess that's what I meant by maybe improper word or improper context of invasive, but taking non-natural plants into a climate that they knowingly don't survive in. What do you think about that? That's just waste, right? Would you say the cons outweigh the pros in that?
Well, I look at it like this. Okay, are you going to bring water from outside areas?
I mean, that's some pretty heavy infrastructure changes, right?
All irrigation is doing that.
Right.
All of the water coming to my house does not come from below my house.
Right.
So every bit of water pipes is essentially piping water in from somewhere else. So what I look at is, okay, if you're going to plant almond trees here, are you bringing water from somewhere that maybe those almond trees would exist?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's some pretty heavy infrastructure changes.
100%, yeah. Fucking, this is a hard one.
Like,
man.
is that right to do?
I don't know.
Yeah, they're pretty. Yeah, it's a sexy neighborhood. Yeah, I love my almond milk, right?
100%.
Is that?
I just don't know if I want people telling me that it's not right. You see what I'm saying? Like, where does the government come in and say, no, you can't do that. You can't plant an almond tree.
So that's actually where I land.
Oh, I got a couple more things for you, buddy, first. Oh.
Anna just walked in. She scared the hell out of me.
She's going to the bathroom or something?
I guess. I don't know.
Oh, my gosh. No,
We're recording, Anna. Don't go number 2.
Oh, my gosh. No, this is funny. So what I wanted to go over. You skipped over my vegetable part about people right now are saying, hey, you know what? Get rid of your grass. Grow a garden. There's like this movement.
So essentially what it is, you still get the greenery, right? But now you actually get function out of your greenery, right? That's kind of the move.
Yeah, and you also offer pollinators like bees and butterflies.
Great point.
Right? You offer diversity in your landscape. There is pressure from HOAs and state agencies to not allow for this because they want to see home prices not decrease. So they don't allow for it.
I mean, 11% is pretty damn significant, right?
And imagine what...
I mean, that's why you pay for an HOA, to ensure home value.
Exactly. And so what... Exactly. It's funny because I keep on thinking about my front yard. I want to grow some like lettuce in my front yard. I keep on thinking about doing it. I want to put some like garden beds out there. And I want to do this, but the first thing that goes through my mind is, what are my neighbors going to think about this? Am I going to get like fucking like fined? All this goes through my head. So most Americans, they're thinking the same thing. Like, maybe I want to grow maybe some tomatoes in my front yard. Dude, tomato bushes grow 8 feet high if you let them go wild, right? So you got to be kind of careful. So here's what I was thinking. Okay, cool. That it's kind of a cool idea. It's cool. Do you think young Americans, right, people our age, 30 and less, right?
First of all, we're 31 now.
I know.
Happy late birthday.
Do you think 31-year-olds and less? I would still say we are young Americans compared to
I would agree.
the older Americans.
Yep, as the data portrays.
Do you, all the people that you know, do you think they're responsible enough right now to grow grass in their front yard, in their backyard, and maintain it properly? Out of all the people you know, how many of them have grass and have taken care of it, and you've been impressed with their grass growing abilities?
Less than 10% of the people I know.
Okay. Do you think growing vegetables and maintaining a proper crop is harder or easier than grass?
10 times harder.
10 times harder.
Yes.
Okay, so is the ask to switch over to vegetables and pollinating plants and all of that, is that not just absurd?
So it is. In short, it is.
Okay.
I guess my slight pushback is maybe like there's this big push from the hippies of the United States right now.
Organic.
Exactly.
Ooh.
To where now you're able to palpably see, hey, my efforts, I water this, I'm able to eat this potato or this piece of lettuce or tomato or whatever the hell the case may be. So that's where I'm like, because grass is grass. You can't eat it. Yeah, that's cool. That's a carbon pit. Awesome. But whenever you're thinking, because, actually almost making full circle in this conversation, whenever we were kind of picking fun at each other earlier as far as, can you imagine all 350 million Americans like us? Hell no. Fuck no. It'd be a horrible place. But whenever you start thinking micro, right? Because taking shit too high level, it's like, okay, it's almost like, oh, your vote doesn't count. My vote doesn't count. It's like, well, you still have to do it. You still have to incrementally get better, right? So whenever you're talking about the vegetable garden, whenever I'm able to incrementally improve my own life, I know all of the material that plant was grown in. I can get behind that. I have turf in my backyard. Does that make me a horrible American? Right?
I got some stats here on turf, but no, so where I was trying to lead to is that, okay, the expectation right now is I think there's like a negative connotation towards grass, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, at least based.
So hold on. On the research, yes. In everyday practice and conversation,
yeah,
it's still a non-factor.
Unless you're in California, really, I feel like.
Hashtag drought shame.
Exactly. So what I was trying to get to with my kind of comment is, okay, negative connotation toward grass. Okay, you're not allowed to grow grass, but we would love for you to grow vegetables. Well, can you even grow grass? So what I was trying to get to is hey, you know what? I would love for you to be able to grow grass. At least your carbon heat sink. If you can do that well, maybe you should be able to grow vegetables and fruit trees and other things.
So you think it should be almost a privilege?
Yeah. Like, hey, guess what? Like I'm already thinking about it. I've already grown grass successfully for multiple years in my backyard. My parents did this for multiple years. Cool. I didn't think it was actually a hard thing to do because my parents just did it always. And all this research, I'm like, man, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of money. It's honestly a royalty item in other countries 100 years ago. We're privileged to have grass here. And now there's this movement from the hippies, which is hilarious to me because usually hippies are kind of like, oh, we're going to do something that no one else can do. Well, dude, growing grass is hard. If you can do that, you can probably grow vegetables. It's similar, I should say. I do agree it's harder. I don't think the people that don't grow anything are going to be able to make that jump to growing vegetables as easily as people that can grow grass. So I'm kind of looking at it as like, hey, you know what? Do we want to be more, say, independent? Do we want to be able to grow some, summer squash? Do we want to grow some potatoes for winter? Do we want to be a little bit more independent? And what I found is I knew you'd like this number. How much would an American save on their grocery bill?
Grocery beers?
Grocery beers.
I like a grocery beer. I can get on that concept.
Go shopping and get a grocery beer? So, how much would an American save?
Imagine paying $5 to go to your grocery store, getting
just
a beer.
for a beer when you walk in?
Grocery beer?
Concept right there, buddy.
Hey,
listeners?
Bleep out that piece.
No, listeners, start it. Because I'm not going to start it. Jared's not going to start it.
No.
Go.
At least give me credit. Can you call it Jared beer or something like that?
Go start a grocery beer store. I'll shop there.
Fuck, so would I.
Jared will shop there. I'll pay even like a 10% premium on the groceries. Sorry. I'm already doing it with inflation, so I'm going to do it with a beer in hand now.
Man, at least make it sting a little less.
So, how much do you save money if you grow your own vegetables and fruits? The average American, they did a study on this. How much you save?
I would say over the course of a week, month, year.
Whole year.
I would say you save $250.
Nope.
What?
$1,250.
Really?
It does take a $50 investment.
Wow. Okay, because I was actually surprised it's only $50. So I'm thinking the cost of the seeds is damn near negligible. But the cost of actually creating the flower bed, the soil, and the water.
So the average, we have different conditions here. Arizona is different type. We get that kind of amend the soil a little bit. But in most areas, they have good soil.
Oh, that's right? Nice.
I know. We don't have good soil here. I'm finding that out in my backyard. But
check your privilege.
$50 is the average. This is according to Burpee Seeds. They did kind of like a land study survey. They said the average American, if you spend $50 in gardening supplies, including seeds, tools, and fertilizer, you can result in about $1,250 in produce annually that you would buy at the grocery store. That's impressive. $1,200. That's impressive. So again, what I'm trying to say there is like, hey, you know what? Maybe there is kind of the argument to take some of your grass space and start maybe repurposing it into vegetation. But I think there's a huge jump to go from xeriscape to vegetation, vegetables and fruits and stuff. It's funny. All day yesterday, I cooked food. Not all day, sorry. 2-3 hours. And the kids were taking naps. Anna was taking care of some kiddos and doing laundry and stuff. And I was watching this guy. I know we're a little over time here. But I was watching this guy on YouTube. Never heard of him. This guy is YouTube. Like, he's got a lot of views. A lot of subscribers. He's a guy up in Sacramento. And this, the reason I was watching for this episode, he's known for what he's called his urban farming. And so he takes his entire backyard and just makes it a vegetable garden. He planted 12 fruit trees 2 years ago. 12 fruit trees. He has 12 trees that bear fruit for him every month from April to October.
You can't even eat all of it.
He can. He sets it up so every tree is at like 15 to 16 days of the month. So he has a fig tree. It produces, let's say, 30 to 50 fruits for 15 to, 20 days of early April, early May. So every 15 days, he has a tree that starts bearing fruit that he can eat. And if you can imagine, let's say he has a peach tree. That peach tree is probably going to produce, let's say, 60 to 70 fruit that are edible. I can eat 50 to 60 fruit probably over 20 days. Right? 2 a day in my family.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about you, single man. Okay.
No, I think he's a family and stuff.
Okay.
But you can imagine he's got, a family, let's just say a family of 3 or family of 4. If you have a peach tree that produces, let's say 60 to 70 fruit.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. Like even you and Brittany, you guys probably eat 1 pear a day.
Yeah.
For 15 days.
Cut easily.
And then that pear tree's done. Then he's got an apple tree for the next 15. So he set it up so that all of them have not gestation. That's mammals.
Kind of.
But kind of bearing a fruit during increments. And I was like, fucking, that is genius. He is self-sufficient from his fruit production for 6 months of the year.
It's kind of
cool. Then he has all his vegetables all year long that are producing. He got winter squash, summer squash, tomatoes, peppers. So, dude, this guy, 12. Now he's taking it this trip. He's probably saving half his grocery bill. He probably doesn't buy any vegetables and fruit.
No produce, yeah,
exactly. That's probably half your bill a year. Maybe a third.
Yeah. I'll
maybe
give you a third.
Right, maybe a third because meat's expensive.
Exactly.
But still, dude, impressive way to use your yard. Now he still has grass too. He's like, I want to have my entire backyard. It's like, green stuff.
That's
So
cool.
I look at that. I'm like, man, I like the idea. So let's get down to our kind of
Opinions. We got to wrap this up.
Yeah, I know. Our general opinions. Do you think governments or America, should our federal government or state governments, even HOAs, should they intervene in the growing of vegetation or non-growing of vegetation in your neighborhood? That's kind of the general take, right? And it's weird because HOAs are kind of like a government in this sense, where
They
kind
are.
of, yeah,
Actually, probably have more power than a government.
it seems like it. So should they intervene or not? Like, should zero-scaping be required?
So I am always going to usually, that's kind of an oxymoron. I always side with less government, less intervention. That's kind of my forte. Yeah. So with that, I would never mandate a Tucson law to say, hey, you have to have zero-scape in your front yards. It's not appropriate, not allowed.
Okay.
I would never, ever, 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 ever endorse a law like that. Should I incentivize, right? Because, there's different levers that the government pulls, right?
Yeah, put a little tax on water.
I would tax water as needed, because California, Arizona, we go into some severe droughts.
Yeah.
Right? So I would tax it. And then if you're willing to pay the tax, okay, do what you got to do. But I would never mandate as far as, hey, you must do zero-scape.
I like it.
I don't know if I like the incentivization to do zero-scape either.
Like $500 pay?
I don't like that.
Me neither.
Yeah, that doesn't sit right with me. So I would never incentivize zero-scape, and I would never disincentivize actual traditional American dream lawns.
Well, you are disincentivizing by increasing the tax on the water.
No, I'm doing that because of the supply and demand.
Okay, how about this? My solution to this, which is funny because I was listening to an episode of Joe Rogan today while I was working out. And this guy brought up an idea that we had back in our drought episode.
Shit.
Yeah.
Did we miss out on being millionaires?
No.
Good.
So he's from Alaska. And he's like, I don't understand why you guys have a drought problem in California, Arizona, Nevada. He's like, this is the craziest thing in the world. Do you guys have an oil problem? No, you don't. You know why? Because I helped build the pipeline from Alaska to the 48 continental states.
Why can't we do the same with snowmelt?
He's like, I got fucking so much water that's melts off my mountains into the ocean every year. Why is there not a water pipeline that's 33 feet in diameter? Does anybody care if a water pipeline leaks? No. He's like, the cost of a water pipeline compared to an oil pipeline is
rounding error.
Exactly. And guess what? What does it do? Creates American jobs. Tax the water for 10 years to pay for it. And then what does it do for the water supply?
You'll never have to worry about it again. And
you can decrease the water cost over the long term. So to your point, yeah, you know what? I'm in California. I'm an almond farmer. Put on a 5% excise tax on my water, knowing that that's going into an investment fund that will pay for a pipeline in 15 years to be built from Alaska to California.
And the reason how you're able to get farmers to sign off on that is farming, just traditionally speaking, is a very generational type endeavor to where your son, your daughter, et cetera, are going to benefit from this. 15 years
is zilch to them.
Yeah.
They look at 15 years like, yeah, I'm still doing the same job. They're like 60, 100-year processes in most farmers. 15 years, they're still doing the same thing they were doing 15 years ago, maybe a little bit better. But it's probably the same guy.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably the same guy or his son.
No, I love the water pipeline.
Right? So, dude, I don't think when the government intervenes in stuff, it becomes more expensive.
Hate it.
And it probably is not incentivizing the right things. The zero-scaping thing, what does that incentivize? People that don't grow their own stuff.
More dependency.
Bingo. What we just did there with kind of saying, oh, you know what? Lawns are hard to do. They're expensive to maintain. They use a lot of fertilizer. Well, you know what? do all that, learn how to grow something. That's hard to do. To be honest, it's hard. It's hard. But then if you're like, you know what, I don't really like this whole lawn thing. Okay, start growing vegetables. We started growing vegetables and stuff like that in our last house. I can't believe how hard it was. I could grow herbs, I could grow cherry tomatoes, and I could grow zucchinis. That's the only thing I could grow. Everything else I tried to grow would just gross out. And Anna wants to grow a bunch of foods here. And I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking hard to do. Like, you got to think about a lot of things, right? And so anyways, I was trying to figure out how I would land
I'm going to go with that. Water pipeline. But other than water pipeline, I think you absolve any and all laws, both pro and con.
Let kind of the market decide it.
Exactly.
If water is expensive, it's expensive. If it's not, it's cheap.
Exactly. And that should be purely based on supply and demand.
And if it becomes expensive enough, guess what? Water pipeline makes more sense.
Bingo. You incentivize the behavior by supply and demand to where natural innovation happens.
I love it, dude. Okay. While back, we're finishing up right here.
What's that?
While back, we were talking about lawns, and you thought it was absolutely nutty to talk about for an hour.
Yep.
How easy was this?
A lot easier than I anticipated, because I remember making fun of this topic whenever you originally presented it 30 episodes ago.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I will eat crow on this one.
Does it mean you're going to like eat a bird, or what does that mean?
I just think it's an expression. Thanks,
Later, guys. Have a good one.